Salutations, BraveHearts and Coach Mad Hatters, and welcome to Team CMHU Situation Report and Complements Transcript regarding A Wrinkle in Time. This particular report is dedicated to our current eclipse season, as well as the numerous planets that are in retrograde, which is causing us to get better acquainted with the things that truly matter. Definitely an honorarium of our quest to know thyself. And me personally, I am your coach. I am your coach, Mad Hatter. I am your head coach, Mad Hatter. Skylar Indigo Inc., also known as the Golden Wildling. The full transcript of this recording is posted on Scribe and can be accessed through the link below, as well as the situation report summary and the premeditative session that is adjacent to this particular report concerning A Wrinkle in Time. Right now, so many of us are truly experiencing firsthand our major wrinkle in time. And so a few days ago, I was prompted to review the film and actually sit and pull notes from it as if it was created to provide me with answers for this precise time and space, to reveal certain clues and cues regarding our courtship with self, as well as speak in more detail to the metaphorical realms of the wounded healer and serve as sacred contributions to what I like to call the Self-Study Summit, as well as coaching by story as an extracurricular activity for those inside of the realms of art, music, craft, vocation, and poetic justice. In light of today's report, I decided to pull a tarot card, and so the tarot of the day is the Judgment. Inside the transcript is a few bullet points that support the tarot card, the Judgment, which involves resurrection, healing music, good news, and revelation. So during this time when things are very challenging to say the least, surround yourself with the music that you truly enjoy and connect with. Involve yourself with situations that will bring you good news, and sit with yourself so that you may become more aligned and fine-tuned in the revelation and the revelations that are unfolding before you. I believe that me being drawn to the film A Wrinkle in Time was because of my own personal experiences with the madness. And I will be the first to say that much of this is as a result of choices that I have made in the past which right now do not feel good. If I am the sum of all of my decisions, where I am right now is landing me in the corner, if I may be completely honest. But as I continue to research and dig more deeper into the energies of having so many planets in retrograde, as well as the mix of eclipse season and what's uniquely going on for 2009, especially as it relates to my pro personal endeavors and how I'd been striving to not only honor the relationship between me, myself, and I, but exploring the options that would get me closer to the life that felt appropriate. The CMHU Self-Study Summit breakdown is as follows. 80% metaphorically speaking, 10% self-care, coaching, tools, and tutelage, 5% tarot treasure trove, and 5% coaching by story, songversation dedication. The intra to the second power personal developmental color code is gold. And the keynote for this session, per Fortune's cookie, is someone who deserves special attention awaits your magic voice. So I would like to say that this segment is in special dedication for those that speak for a living, for those that create for a living, for those that are expected to produce original content, to motivate and inspire through art, music, craft, vocation, and poetic justice. Also in dedication for today's session is a 3-card layout pulled from the prototype deck that I am in the mission in the mission of commissioning, which is called the Jolly Staffers Oracle card deck. And so card number 1 is get ready, get set, go. Begin your sheroes, heroes, or fool's journey. The second card out, tracking the feedback gathered by zodiac, cosmic, planetary energetics, plus influential patterns, which is in care of the Intra to the Second Power Make-A-Wish Foundation. The third card out, which I truly love as I've been walking the path to the official path to know thyself for the last 10 years. It's been quite intriguing to routinely invite myself to experience, discover, or explore the unique creativity about myself, allowing myself to be free to create according to the inner voice of my mind, to be curious and explore according to the hunches and the intimate invitations to just see what happens, to venture into the wild unknown. And if you really think about it, for those that have enjoyed and have a good acquaintance with the story, A Wrinkle in Time, especially the film, I have not had a chance to visit with the book. So today's conversation will truly be according to the film. A Wrinkle in Time has a lot to do with one's curiosities and courage and the acceptance and affirmation of self. And our relationships with those that we expect to love us, the validation that they truly do. And that when that goes in question, it has the ability to shift paradigms and make mountains out of molehills and block communication and encourage distance. And I believe I was drawn to the film to pull out certain details because of the excruciating heart's desire to see my children on a daily basis. And because all three of them are grown to a certain extent, my youngest is 17, my oldest is going on 30, my middle is 25. So it seems quite strange that I would want to see them on a daily basis, seeing as that everyone is now at the point where they are branching out and establishing their own lives. What makes it quite interesting is that I am in the film. Let me say that. Let me slow down and say I identify with, first and foremost, the dad, as well as Meg, but fascinated by Charles Wallace and the missus. So, and exactly in that order. And that's the angle that I will be metaphorically speaking from. So let's get into it. So the storyline summits, quotes, questions, and quintessential clues and cues are as follows. Or are as follow. Yeah, are as follows. Sounds kind of weird. Are yeah, I'm not gonna say it again. It sounds weird. So love is always there, even when you don't feel it. Not gone, just unfolded. That was part of the first thing said as the movie began. And I usually say to myself, seeing as that I am the type that will review films and read stories and listen to lectures and indulge in performances looking for signs and symbols from the divine. The divine speaks in signs. I carry that with me everywhere I go. I'm like Dora the Explorer when it comes to me leaning in to decipher what it is that the divine could be saying to me. And when I am prompted to go visit with a certain piece of content, I pay close attention to the first couple of sentences spoken. Like, how does the story open up? And having such a troubled childhood, it always felt like the love was gone. So it reminded me, even with the challenges that I am being invited to face in this very present moment regarding my family space, my emotional intelligence, my homestead honorariums, my grapevine gratitudes, it's inviting me to reconcile my past, good, bad, or indifferent, and lead with the true understanding that love is always there, even when you don't feel it. Not gone, just unfolded. The next thing that caught and resonated very, very deeply was Charles Wallace's word of the day. I am such a word of the day type of girl. I've always been a lover of vocabulary and language. This present day, I'm considered a word wizard. I pay very close attention to the wisdom of someone's words. I pay attention to those that spend words unwisely, as well as those that do. So, to have it as a habit that each day you're going to highlight a word and you're going to seek the definitions that are intertwined in your day, or you're going to provoke the definition to reveal itself in that day, even if it's just you glancing at the word and the definition several times that day so that it may become imprinted, assuring that every day you learn a new word, you increase your vocabulary, and you enrich your comprehension of the world through words. The next thing that hopped into my realm of consciousness is the sensibilities of a bully. Because quite honestly, there was no true reasoning behind Meg getting as bullied as she did. Okay, yes, her dad was missing and she's a little weird about that. But to like single her out and make that the trigger for treating her badly baffled me. And I connected so deeply with that because I was terribly bullied in elementary school to the point where it determined if I was going to go outdoors or not. And I spent long stretches of time in my room avoiding the bullies that were outside my door. And so it hit my heart to see the unjust treatment of how she was taunted because of the disappearance of her dad, as if just the disappearance alone was not an element of emotional bullying. Just his absence is a bully because it totally rearranges your capabilities to be free. It fucks with your focus and it makes you tender and sensitive where you wouldn't ordinarily be tender. It's quite an amazing dynamic. And so it made me, as a grown person now, looking into that, made me wonder about the sensibilities of those that figure they can bully others. And so that was another dynamic that took me down memory lane in quest of answers to adhere to the energies that are currently provoking me to take a look at myself and reconcile my past so that it may align with my present and my future. Which leads right into the saying that the wound is the place where the light enters you. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Having my Chiron in Aries, I have been challenged with this thing called a lack of self-worth. And until I really began to research and develop my knowledge around my Chiron being in Aries, I knew it through experience, but not through theory. Not seeing my wounds in print. So it elevated my curiosity to want to dig deeper into my wounds. And when I began to notice them and how they played a part in how I maneuvered through the world and why I did some of the things that I did, good, bad, or indifferent, how it contributed to the absence of my wonder. Meg was very, very fearful about a lot of things. She did not trust. She was emotionally withdrawn. And so the unfolding of her meeting the missus did not delight her in the way that it did with Charles Wallace. Her responses, her responses to the meet and greet was the total polar opposite of the wonder that a child growing up uh, completely free and balanced would have been in awe to know Mrs. What's-It and Mrs. Who and Mrs. Which. In awe. But instead, it was, I don't like this. This is weird. You know, like, let's go, Charles Wallace. We're backing away from all of this. This doesn't make sense. totally rebuking the whole thing. And so when when Mrs. Witch asks, oh, she didn't ask, but um, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun. When it was displayed of her parents in the lecture, which I also love, and I didn't put in the transcript, but I was moved to see that her parents were inside the power couple realm lecturing together, which is one of my dreams. Not sure if I'll unpack it here, but yes, it's a dream for one for me to teach, but it's also like the added bonus of having a romantic intellectual partner who could and would be willing to tag team the classroom so that the energy can be combined and the student really truly can get a surround sound of learning and a more holistic approach to comprehension and things like that. But before I go on a tangent, we're going to keep it moving. So inside that lecture, her dad asked, what if the universe is also inside of us? And that question has truly been the staple to what it is that I've been striving to uncover for the last 10 years. It has been in conjunction with me aiming to know myself and to try to understand the necessary components of me and how I could somehow find a way to begin to like and love myself and not have to routinely be in some therapist's office on antidepressants or on some long extended suicide watch. I started this journey in 2009, completely bummed out with life, not understanding why everything felt so out of place and strange. And so, slowly but surely, my scholarship, which was self driven, truly what now I can say is a quilt of all sorts of different patterns. But most of it is interweaved inside the metaphysical realms, the fantastical realms, the fairy realms, fairy tales, storylines, crystals, stones, the mystical realms. That's where I now find myself. I do not identify with the mainstream conventional textbook curriculum. I don't relate, but I am quite at home inside the mysteries of metaphora, fairy. So when the dad asks, what if the universe is also inside of us? It's almost like chimes went off in the inside of me because I watch the response of the entire audience as they began to judge and shun what it is that he was offering them, which led me to question, what if he had 100% activation with everyone on board? How would that lecture had turned out? And the place was packed. That everyone was already on their own pro-personal journeys to better know themselves and understand the true dynamic of our quintessential existence. That he tells them that just by tapping into the right, precise frequency, using your mind, you can begin to astral travel. And then it goes into the story where the children meet Mrs. Witch, and she says that just by finding the right frequency and having faith in who you are, and of course, it's easier said than done, but I believe in a time where individuals will begin to lean into the curiosity of that which they are emotionally invested in, that more will take up the cause to be led by their heart. They will begin to engage by heart. Now, on a more lighter note, when they finally did get a chance to tesseract, which is astral travel, and so they reach another dimension, they are now actively pursuing the rescue mission for her dad, who tesseract into an unknown space but found himself trapped and not being able to return home. And so the missus explained that to Meg, even though she was very untrusting and fearful and very frustrated with the way her present day life was going between her and Charles Wallace. And right now, the traveling friend his name escapes my mind. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. But yes, so all of them was able to persuade Meg to let's go and rescue your dad because we received a message of distress, and so we're here, and this is what the agenda is. And so it also made me think, like those of us who are those of us who find ourselves in mental turmoil, who are trapped in what society likes to call mental illness, which I really think is more emotional illness than it is mental illness. But we'll unpack that in another conversation. How many of those of us that have been misdiagnosed with having a mental illness, totally dismissing all sorts of emotional trauma and turmoil, and then being left to either turn into some medicated zombie or left in some facility labeled as whatever name they figure like they want to call you. And so, me fighting against being complacent in that particular zone, because I continue to contest, there's nothing wrong with my mind. I refuse to take up the whole mental illness banner. And yes, for a little while, I toggle in and out of certain pharmaceutical cocktails, to a time came where I was losing my motor skills and not being able to land sentences, and all sorts of other stuff was going on. I cut it cold turkey. Yes, against doctor's orders. I don't want to hear that shit, because you don't live with me every day. And quite frankly, you only see me like once a month. So you can't possibly. And I know with, Big Pharma and the whole uh, physician God complex, that it's almost, a crime to speak against this fuckery. But here we are. Here we are. And so they tesseract to another dimension. And who was there to greet them? The beautiful, colorful flowers that actually had the ability, the capability to hold conversation. How about that? Yes. Hashtag plant life pioneers. A shout out to all my plant lifers, my herbalists, my botanists. I send you love and light, whether I know you or no. I love you without knowing you. And Mrs. Wetsit says what? The flowers are gossipers. They speak in color. I've always been tuned in to the color spectrum. In my yesteryears, I was a professional hairstylist and colorist. And it's a unique specialty to be in as a hairstylist. You really have to do um, your homework when it comes to preventative maintenance and hydration, and just overall care for the clients that have permanent color. And so it taps your eyesight to see Technicolor as a conversation. And so when she said that, it tickled me because it's so true. Those that allow themselves to respect the dynamic of color speak in a different type of conversation. The communications are enriched. I think that's why I'm drawn to artists and those that are not afraid to speak in color. So once they speak to the flowers, give their direction, There's a moment when they get their first glance at what's called the it. And so Mrs. Witch goes into the summary and backdrop to the it, which are those that have been taken over by what our society today will call negative vibes. Now, me personally, because I am viewing life in a more holistic manner, the negative and the positive, the currents of negative and positive work as they do a battery. And so I've been learning to respect the medium, which in the coaching world is called balance. It's what the Law 44, which is brought to us by the Knowledge University with brothers Blue Pill and Red Pill, they truly, truly break down the Law 44. And there's a medium in between polarities, regardless of which polarity we're talking about. And we shouldn't lean too far to the right or too far to the left. We should be flexible enough to sway, but somewhere in that movement, return back to center. And so Mrs. Witch goes into how the that there are how can I say this? That there are several energy vampires in allies' clothing. So they may present themselves as an ally, but after a while, you will see that they will just drain you of your energy. And that usually when we are in contact with people, places, situations that drain us, what is replaced, it's replaced by, should I say, very empty esteem and vacant optimism. And we lose our ability to fill our own cup. And then misery moves in, and we are in this fog of despair and dismay. I know that life personally. There were a few things that happened in my childhood that truly just zapped my ability to renew optimism and became, maybe I'll say, Meg times 10. Became very disenchanted with life. And it wasn't really much happening in my daily reality that boost or overthrew or recovered, redeemed me from this sorrow. And so after they deal with their encounter with the it, they tesseract again to go to see Happy, which is one of the more delightful moments of the film. But in the midst of them going to see the balanced medium, they tesseract, which means they astral travel into the realm to go see Happy. And Meg had such a hard time. And just so you know, the medium, his name is Happy. So in the before they go to see him, they call him the seer. More like these days who we would call the oracle or the tarot reader or the light worker. And so right as they tesseract into the dimension to go see Happy, Meg asked Mrs. Witch, why am I so in pain while everyone else is glorious, per se? I'm in pain. Everyone else around me seems to be glorious. We're all tesseracting. Why is it that it's being so hard on me? And so Miss Witch responded by saying, you must first get in tune with the universe and then with yourself. You don't want to return as yourself. And so they exchange a few more sentences before she says, do you know how many choices, events, and shifts in time that led to the making of you? And the question was building up to respond to Meg's wanting to return as someone else. And I so related. For so much of my life, I wanted to be something other than what I was. And I can't say that I could pinpoint exactly what it is that I wanted to be. I just didn't want to be me. I did not want the heartache of a tumultuous childhood. I wanted to be released from the agony of what felt like rejection and abandonment. And I wanted to know a life where things were stable and I had the ability to magnetize folks instead of repel them. It ached me to be such a weirdo to the point where I developed a personality that truly gave the impression that I wasn't afraid of anything or anyone, and that laughed in the eye of danger. And having a Capricorn sun made it kind of easy to pull that off when in fact my inner child was always sad, always full of sorrow, always wishing that I grew up in the type of home that explored the outer dimensions of this mundane reality, that it was truly the incubator for dreams. So much so that I totally cultivated my imaginary realms at an early age, and that's where I hung out. Instead of being outside where I could potentially be bullied, I cultivated an entire universe with all sorts of people, all sorts of fauna and flora. Oh yeah, all sorts, all sorts. I truly am an unofficial Imagineer, just because of the countless amounts of hours I have sat with my eyes closed and my sight turned inward. These days, the trendy word for it is called meditation. But I think because I was a bit obsessive of it, it's got to be another term for the way that I was doing it. And I don't think it was so much considered escapism because I was actually doing inner mental work. Didn't know that that was what that was at the time, but nonetheless. And so when they go and meet Happy, it comes a time where he asks them to close their eyes and open up their memories. Close your eyes and open up your memories. And it instantly took me to this time and space during this particular eclipse season, especially during the transitioning of the moon's movements and influences and aspects, that we are being invited to take a trip down memory lane to reconcile our past, present, and our future. Because we will be facing the tipping point of the dark shadows of our past, present, and potential future, and how we are to be the warrior if we can. Can we? Can we be the warrior? And so Happy tells Meg that you can feel the answers, but you can't avoid them. Which was quite a statement for me, because anything that hurt too bad, I would take it, acknowledge it, and then bring it into my imaginal space and redirect it and turn it into what it is that I wanted it to be. I'm not exactly sure how healthy that was, but it was still a technique of mine. And so love is the frequency. And I view love as natural affection, regardless if it's romantic. Yeah, whether it's parental, whether it's friendly, whether it's competitive, it's still a natural level of affection. When the affection is compromised, the frequency of love is compromised. And this is just in my humble opinion. And so when they leave Happy's realm, the plan was to go back to Earth, meet up with Meg's mom, tell her the situation, bring her on board so that they could have a little bit more reinforcement, because they truly found out, it was confirmed that the it had her dad captive, right? And so what was rather amazing to me is that in Meg's desperation, her chaotic desperation forced the hand of the trajectory. And and the force of that chaotic desperation took over the will of the misses. And they found themselves in the dimension with the it. They was about to face up with that joint. And so the missus was like, nah, we got to get out of here. We don't belong here. We're going to actually evaporate if we stay here. And even though I understand what they meant by that, but it provoked me to think about how some light workers are a little squeamish about the firm stance of doing shadow work. Now, because I've been on a hunt for light workers and very solid tarot readers, I've sifted through many, and I have 7. I have 7 tarot readers that I follow on YouTube that are not shy about inviting folks to get to know themselves, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. And they truly are patient with explaining the ups and downs and the benefits of shadow work. They not these ultra positive la la land type readers. They're not afraid to say when the card pops up and one has to check themselves. And so that's what it made me think of. So before they pieced out, they told Meg, Mrs. Witch actually told, you will be tested every step of the way. And so mind you, let's just say you've been dumped into your shadow side, or you've been dumped into the valley, and you now have to find your way through the dark. And this is supreme advice for those that find themselves in situations that are so frustrating or so tragic that it's darkness all around them. And they have to patiently, step by step, walk themselves out of that. You will be tested every step of the way. You will encounter things you think you know, but you don't. And it made me think that I wish I would have had this advice in 2009 when I started my walk, my journey with getting to know myself. When I officially began to work on me. I wish there was someone right at that threshold when I got dumped into my darkness to tell me, you will be tested every step of the way. You will encounter things you think you know, but you don't, which tells me you must remain open during these moments. And that the moment you think you know is the moment it gets hard. And I still have to say that to myself today, to this day. Because your time in the valley is not, how can I say, it's not, it's not pre-planned. Well, I think it is pre-planned, but I'm not sure if one knows going into the valley how long they will be there. And just so we clear, my entire past 10 years have not been valley driven. I've had some peaks of light, and I've reached a few summits, but it's been an ebb and flow of summit and valley, summit and valley. And honestly, at this point in time where I am now in 2019 and this journey, this voyage started in 2009, yes, I somehow softly but arrogantly figured that I was leveling up out of at least having a valley moment for a while. I figured I'd graduated out of the valley moment. And yet, as I record this, I speak to you with in front of me a major dilemma that has multiple components to it, many of them that are not functioning as properly as I suspected that they would be. And it's a bit disheartening because I've been out of commission for a while. And yes, I am the sum of my choices, but I promise you, I made the choices with the best that I had at the time, and none of them were easy. They all seem to have such weight connected to them, where the strategy that I adhered to seemed to give me the indication that I'd be far from another valley moment for a while. But lo and behold, that is so not the case. Inside this eclectic eclipse season and the massive planets that are now in retrograde. And I say all my ruling planets, yeah, they're all in timeout. They are all in timeout. And so what it feels like is when the missus pieced out and they had to go the journey alone. And when Mrs. Whatsit suggested that they leave them with gifts, I broke into tears. I broke into tears mainly because it felt like Saturn and Mercury, my two, and Chiron, but Saturn and Mercury, my two most ruling planets, sent me a message to say, we've left you with gifts. We've left you with gifts. And so Mrs. Who gives Meg her glasses, and they are to give her magical sight. And so she tells her, they work well in a moment of peril, for they see that which is enfolded, not gone, just enfolded. And I'll expand more on that in a little bit after we get to a few things. So Mrs. Whatsit, and I'm looking at that, I just see a typo, which is the perfect segue into me saying that all the transcripts um, and actual situation reports, you may find typos because I am now challenging myself to produce without spell check. And I know some may say, well, that's unprofessional. But quite honestly, I am not a professional. I am not a professional. I am a Coach Mad Hatter. And I am a Coach Mad Hatter with Chiron and Aries, which means I struggle with perfection almost as an addiction. And so, with me wanting my documents to be so superior, I get caught in procrastination with trying to adhere to this perfectionistic, yeah, scared of rejection type shit that I got going on. And so, I don't even know what I could call it, but one of the balancing efforts that I have imposed on myself is to deliver it in raw form. I will still format it and populate it to the best of my ability, but it being 100% perfect, I'm working myself out of that urge. So Mrs. Weston says to Meg, "To you, I give you the gift of your faults." I'm boo-hooing by this time. I am like, yeah, the waterworks is on. Because where is it hardly ever presented to someone that there's gifts attached to their faults? Like, who gets to hear that often? We are shunning and running from our faults like the plague. And so to witness a situation where a celestial being or celestial like being tells a mere human that there's gifts attached to your faults, like you truly can like skip the portion that tells you you have to be perfect in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Like it's okay to be faulty. And it just made me want to holler like, tell that to the humans round here. The DMV is truly like no, perfection elite. There is no room for fault. There is no room for shortcomings. You are truly judged by your ability to presume perfect. And I got sucked up in that vortex. And I fit quite nicely, seeing as that it fed all of my insecurities. It fed all of it to be presumed perfect. Presumed. So Mrs. Witch, she says, "My gift is my command. Stay together. Don't let anyone separate you." And immediately I thought about COINTELPRO. I thought about the mystic infiltration systems of the virtual world. I thought about unsolicited GPS coordinates. I thought about secondhand gossip and assumptions making asses out of everybody. My gift is my command. I thought about all sorts of folks we are around here asking for permission to be ourselves. Stay together. Don't let anyone separate you. And then it says, keep going. We'll be watching. Which threw me back into the mindset of how in these retrogrades we be forgetting that the planets are just enfolded, not gone, just enfolded. And they can still very much get messages to us, and they still very much have their eyes on us, influencing us, speaking to us, directing us, instructing us. And so immediately after they disappear from the scene, this dense forest springs up, and it compromises their immediate sight. They can't see the distance. They cannot see the forest for the trees. Immediately, they are blinded in sight. And so they begin to panic because then they realize that Charles Wallace is not with them. In an instant, Mrs. Wesett chimes in, and in a loud and clear voice, she gives them precise direction and guidance. And then Mrs. Witch chimes in, and she tells them, get to the wall. Get to the wall. Have you ever had those moments where your inner voice was literally screaming at you to do something? And even though you hesitated, at the end of the day, you realize, I need to go check this out, or I need to go do what my instincts is telling me to do. And so as they made their way to the wall, this big cloud of aggressive dust is chasing them. Well, it's giving the impression that it's chasing them, because if they was to slow up in their movement, the dust would have consumed them. And right in the moment of the excitement, the thought comes to Meg to jump into, well, no, let me slow down. The thought comes, the moment when she actually analyzes the direction of the force of the dust cloud and how it's propelling things over the wall. The wall was massive. There's no way they would have climbed that wall. And so what it made me think of in this instant, how many of us are being challenged to take certain leaps of faith, to let certain things go, to trust in those that love us and invite us to adventure, or those who are patient enough to study with us and listen to us and be a sounding board and a shoulder to cry on. And so in that moment, the trust of friendship was to get into that stump and allow the force to catapult them across the wall. So it really stood out to me about us and how we deal with certain leaps of faith, and how the moment we step into the tree trunk, we are catapulted into another totally different situation that proves to be propelling and advantageous. A little bumpy, but advantageous all the same. Not gone, just enfolded. And it's amazing because I still cannot think of the young fella's name. I can't think of his name right now. I see his face. And so I remember him asking Meg, like, I mean, not, well, yeah, like, you have no idea how incredible you are, do you? And it was just such a tender, intimate moment in friendship where I know that I am guilty of having those around me give me compliments that are very hard to receive because I refuse to see certain highlights of myself that are pretty good. It's almost like I blended into that moment watching that. Why is it so hard for us to receive? Well, some of us, because some, yeah, they just suck it all up. But how is it that there are some of us that it's so very hard for us to receive certain compliments, or it's hard for us to be able to engage in our strengths as true strengths? Like we see them, we view them, we accept them, we embrace them as true strengths. Especially those with invisible sight. Those of us with invisible sight, there is a magical transformation going on right now during eclipse season. And I believe, in addition to all that I have just spoke about why I was drawn to review this film again, is because it was giving me an answer to, how can I say this? Giving me a response to my agony of my lost sense of belonging, my incredible feats of self acceptance and self actualization. But I know my so called weirdness has value to it. And I've studied enough and researched and developed enough to know this is fact. And so after they go through a couple of more adventurous moments, they find themselves in this all white room. And so Meg pulls out the glasses with magical sight. And instantly, she's able to see all sorts of dynamics that are invisible to the naked eye. Because of this specialty magical eyesight, she is now able to see a staircase that only lights up after the step ahead of her only lights up after she stepped the one before it. Like the entire staircase did not all light up at once. And I know I'm possibly singing to the choir for anyone that will listen to this and know the film, the story, and is really truly familiar with it. But then we'll just look at it as it being a sharing of aha. And so she travels the entire staircase, which she would have never saw without the lens of magical sight, which leads her to her dad. And I pause because just in my recent years engaging in what's called self-coaching and self-inner healing, have I come to the maturity to admit that most of my hostility in my younger days was due to me feeling like I was robbed of my relationship with my dad. And that's not to dispense any shame on anyone else. It just feels like I could have been saved from tumultuous bouts of agony and hostility if that particular void had been filled. And so that moment in time when he realized that it was her and she realized it was him and they embraced, it really felt like her journey of 1,000 miles was paying off in a major way. And so even if you listen to this and it doesn't it's not resonating with regards to a dad's embrace, you really truly can fill in the blank, and it can even be the embrace of of a certain goal or achievement or experience that you've been waiting very long and anticipating its encounter. Whatever your journey is, if you feel in your heart it's pretty much calculating up to about 1,000 miles, I know that the closer that you get with each step, you anticipate the embrace of that person, place, or situation. And in that moment, that's what the film seemed to symbolize to me, especially with me feeling like my journey in in the valley is like never is like the never ending story. But I think one day soon I will be able to embrace that which I seek, that which I truly seek. And that's personal and professional alike. So the ebb and flow of time, the calculation of time, and the entrapment of work, passion, or dream. Because as I said earlier, I first and foremost identified with Meg's dad and how this journey, even though it intertwines me personally and professionally, it still was me learning and discovering how to cultivate my ability to tesseract, my ability to astral travel for the sake of my own survival and reclaiming myself. And so the moment when you have to face the it. And it was also very, very amazing how Meg was coughing up and coughing out the black cloud. Like when she was coughing, there was black smoke from the it that was coming out of her mouth. It makes me wonder about the condition of my aura. And since I've spent more time on this earth in turmoil and sorrow than not, it leads to the answers of quite a bit of mystery around my health and prosperity. What I am very, very happy to report is that the mission of the Coach Mad Hatter is intertwined in what's called chaos magic. And that I'm learning that there is this enormous mastering that allows one to reverse the curse, if you will. There are magical activities and exercises that not only allows you to astral travel through dimensions and tap into certain realms for healing and connect with certain beings for healing, that you can also take that which is chaotic in your own personal space and magically transmute it and utilize the gifts of your faults. And without shame, acknowledge your faults and embrace them, which transforms into loving yourself. And you will love yourself not despite your faults, but because of your faults. And so Mrs. Wish says, all those willing to face their darkness and bring the best of themselves to the light. And for some reason I didn't capture the entire context. I guess that's the part that really anchored me in, is because that's where I find myself right at the moment. Yet again, facing my darkness and striving to bring my best self to light. And so in the midst of all of that, over the last 10 years, I truly, truly identified with Meg's dad after they, deal with the it and recover Charles Wallace, and Meg takes the true face value of the beauty of her faults. That she has this moment with her dad once they return back to the house. And he says, I wanted to shake hands with the universe, but I should have been holding yours. That is what I feel inside of the agonizing desire to want to have a homestead where my children can be with me frequently. I'll just say that, because I know that they're grown. So the likelihood of us all living together is slim. Not impossible, but slim. But it's quite interesting because it wasn't really it wasn't really, not really, it didn't turn into a professional until years later. My journey started with me trying to save myself. And so, yes, I was trying to shake hands with the universe because I knew that there was more to this existence than this wretched ass agony of, yeah, wanting to die every day I woke up. And it still is a catch 22 because even in hindsight, I wonder, me being on set with my children for the last 10 years instead of not, they would have gotten an angry, tumultuous, outlandish, incredibly destructive mom. I have no idea what it would have done to them as little humans. I had not done the work. Shit, to be completely honest, I didn't know anything about any work. And so love is the quintessential language. I had to find my way back to myself and learn how to love me. And what's so very interesting about this ordeal is that I had to learn to love me without anything, with no additives or no preservatives. Which means I could not hide behind a salary. I couldn't hide behind the accumulation of property or the buildup of finances, 401k, none of that. And I still had to find a way to love me. I had to discover the gifts of my faults. It was the only way. I truly, and trust me when I say this, I'm still a work in progress. I'm still a work in progress. But I truly had to learn how to love the raw, uncut me without the fluff. And that was a very, very hard thing to do. And so I'll close out this session with inviting you to go and visit with the Songversation, I Believe. And I'm calling it a Songversation versus it just being a song on the soundtrack because it's a conversation all in itself. And it's especially dedicated to those that are on a journey to find, reclaim, and love themselves. Those that are working to fill up their own cup so that it may overflow and they can be of substance to others. With that said, I bid you all the courage you need to walk your black mile until it turns golden, and all the patience you need to research and develop any that I've spoke of in this segment so that you may keenly unpack it and find your own message and symbols and signs from the divine. I wish you well.